I'm Scott Bain, they call me the old farmer, and this is my 2.5 cents worth. Since I will only be talking, I'm going to do this as an audio-only recording. It's easier and faster if I keep this as an audio. I wish that YouTube would make it possible to do audio-only recordings without having to do a full video. Maybe they will someday. Today we will be talking about the differences between organic and chemical fertilizers. There is much hype and emotional baggage tied to this subject. As always, if you disagree, it's no problem. We all have our opinions. All I'm trying to do is bring a bit of understanding so that you can make a better decision relating to you and your family. In the beginning, fertilizers were not used. Plant spacing had to be further apart so that the growing of food was only a small percentage of what we can do today. In fact, we could not support the population of the world without the use of fertilizers. Records show that as far back as the early Egyptians, they used fertilizers. Whether it was true or not, the American Indians reportedly showed the colonists that placing a fish on each mound of corn seeds to help the corn grow made a real difference. Various ground rocks and animal manures have been added to the garden plot to increase food production yields. After World War II, the use of chemical fertilizers increased to the point where today most agriculture uses chemical fertilizers, whereas the use of natural or organic fertilizers, except for organic farmers and gardens, has almost disappeared. Adding minerals to the ground is basically grinding rock to the level of talcum powder, and this is spread on the ground. In fact, some have theorized that ice ages have been caused in some instances because large forests used up all the minerals and eventually died, changing the composition of the atmosphere and absorption of sunlight. We are now aware that only a few degrees difference can change current flow in the oceans, affecting climate on land masses. It is necessary today to use fertilizers if we wish to garden or farm. If it's a new plot of land, we may be able to grow a garden for a few years until the nutrients are used up, and then the ability to grow food starts to diminish. What is the difference between chemical and organic fertilizers? Actually, in the laboratory, there's no difference from the point of view of the plants being grown. Nitrogen is nitrogen, whether it comes from the air, from animals, or chemically, such as from liquid ammonia that we use around the house. There is no difference. The same is true for phosphorus. It's a chemical that is often bound to other elements, and this makes it difficult for plant usage. Potash, or potassium, is a mineral that can be found naturally and is usually concentrated in wood and vegetable ash. Then there are the minerals not found in the usual NPK fertilizers. Epsom salt, also called magnesium sulfate, enhances the take-up of the NPK nutrients. Calcium is also an important mineral used in agriculture and gardening. There are many other trace minerals needed in growing healthy plants and in our own good health. The advantage to organic or natural fertilizers, often manures from animals, is that it is already a byproduct of animals or byproducts of other natural processes such as compost. It contains many of the nutritional elements for good growing of plants and for us. Often, it is at lower amounts and may release back into the ground at a slower rate, which feeds the plants longer and at a more manageable level for the plants to use. If the animal is healthy, chances are good that the manure used will be a balanced product for fertilizing. In some instances, such as for chicken and horse manure, the nitrogen levels may be too high, and a cooking off period in a composting pile is needed. In fact, composting replicates what the animals do, and the end product is similar to manure. Chemical fertilizers are not bad for growing plants. There, however, are 3 strong negatives for chemical fertilizers. First, they may overwhelm the plants through either being too strong or too quick in the release of nutrients. Second, they do not contain everything the plant needs to grow as healthy, and therefore we, through eating the plants, or eating the meat from animals that have eaten these plants will not receive the nutrients we believe we are ingesting. Third, the cost of making chemical fertilizers. Even though the dollar cost may seem low, the environmental costs are high with the use of petroleum and carbon dioxide created in making the fertilizers. As an example, household ammonia is basically nitrogen in a liquid form at a 5 to 10% solution in water and is ammonium hydroxide, which is mostly nitrogen. Use it straight out of the bottle and you can kill poison ivy. You are oversaturating it with nitrogen, which it will take in before it realizes that the amount will burn the plant. If you dilute it down and spray your lawn, it will grow very well. Also, spraying ammonia at skunks will chase them away, but that's for another 2.5 cents. Sometimes in the manufacturing of chemical fertilizers, bad elements may be introduced at the government-accepted levels, but not ours. But to be honest, this can be true for natural fertilizers too, and of course, compost. Do we need organic foods in our lives? It all depends upon the individual. Some individuals are more sensitive to compounds and elements that are manufactured, but I see this more in the insecticides and weed killers than chemical fertilizers. Yet there are some people who cannot handle some elements, so avoid them. In others, it may cause cancers. It all depends upon the amount and how often the person is around these things. Oxygen and water are poisonous at abnormal levels, so do the best you can today and try to do better tomorrow. That's all any of us can do. We have all heard about eating our broccoli. It's good for us. There is something in broccoli that if I eat too much, I will start to ache in my bones and I feel lousy. It's not as bad with the other vegetables in the cole family, but broccoli can put me down for a couple of 3 days. Secondly, I must have the gene that makes broccoli extremely bitter for me. Horseradish is considered bitter, but I like it, and I actually feel better if I have some. All it means is that each of us are unique, and as such, we have to manage things in ways that help rather than believing one size fits all. How do I do my garden? I use as much natural as I can and then supplement with chemical. The longer we live here, the more we will have in compost and other natural compounds that will be better for the garden. When purchasing foods, I try to stay within 100 miles of where we live. I seem to feel better. One commodity that seems to be getting scarce that we all should be aware of is common sense. If you still have some, use it. You will do much better having it. For those lacking common sense, try to find some. It could keep you from killing yourself. Well, that's my 2.5 cents worth. This is the old farmer, Scott Bain. Be well.
Down on the farm.